Hello, we've just released version 0.10 of Humbug, and one of the features that it has is a new system shell, and this allows us to run special command lines inside of the development environment. And the one I want to talk about is m6rc, which is the metaphor compiler. Now, the Metaphor compiler has been available as a standalone tool before, and we had a version integrated into the development environment as well. But this version allows us to put more parameters and more capabilities into the command line, so we can do more interesting things with it. And it allows us to build tools that leverage AI to do some specific action that we want to take with our code. Now we use this when we're building software to describe the behavior we want and then let the AI or a series of AIs suggest ways of doing it. But we can also use it to do things like reviewing code. So in a previous tool called m6rc, we did exactly that. We actually used the metaphor format, the embedded metaphor compiler library to actually build a standalone tool that could review code. But now we can actually implement that functionality inside of the development environment. So I'm going to very quickly show you the way that we do that, and this is the metaphor file for that code reviewer. It's actually fairly generic. In fact, if you read this, there's nothing specific about any particular programming language, and this is literally a cut and paste of the metaphor that we had for that m6rc tool. Now, there's a couple of things that are very slightly different in this because they were updated to work with this version of the tool, and that is the fact that we have a parameter $1 and parameter $2 on the include and embed lines, and that means pick up argument 1 and argument 2 from the command line and embed those in, and it means that we can use these as a template which allows us to actually use the same command to act on different sets of guidelines and different files. So I'll give you an example of that in a moment. The idea, of course, is that we want to be able to review our software, and in order to do that we need some guidelines as well. If we don't give it some guidelines, the AI will try and come up with what it thinks is a reasonable set of behaviors, but the problem is that will be very, very different depending on the AI backend, and it will change from run to run as the AI model picks different things. So what we have here is we have a couple of sets of guidelines. We have what we call a generic guide, and these are a series of design principles, software design principles that we'd like to use on just about any sort of software at all. So that's why they're called a generic guide. And in fact, the best part about this is this list got created by using a series of different AI models and have them tell us what they thought were the best design principles. So you may not completely agree with all of these, but this list is a set of principles that can be applied in doing software code reviews. What we also have is we have a Python guide, and these are a set of rules that we use or would like to see used for the software inside of the Humbug environment. In fact, these are ones we can apply to Humbug itself. So if you look at these are actually the Python guide is picking up the generic guide. So in fact, as part of the context, this is the information we're going to give to the AI about what we want it to do. We're actually telling it, when we use the Python guide, to also use all the capabilities in the generic guide as well. So it will get you both the best of both worlds. And that means that if we used a different language, we could have that generic guide, and then we could have, say, TypeScript or JavaScript or Java, Kotlin, C#, C++, whatever. You can have different guides for different languages. So what we can do from the system shell is we can invoke the metaphor compiler, and we can tell it that we want to use this review script. So we're going to do that right now. So we're going to say m6rc. We're going to tell it we would like to use Claude Sonnet 3.7 to actually do the review, and we're going to pass it the review file, that one, and we're going to use the generic guide. So this is path to the, sorry, not the generic guide, we want to use the Python guide. We can use the Python guide, and finally we want to actually review a specific file. So I'm going to pick one of the random file out of the code within Humbug. So in this case I'm going to pick something from the abstract syntax tree logic. And what you'll see is when we run this command, it will actually generate the prompt. It's quite a large prompt, and it will actually send that to, in this case, Claude Sonnet. And you can see Claude is responding back and giving suggestions based on those set of review criteria. So far so good. It's quite interesting. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading through this, but you can see it's making suggestions about how we can make this code better. But one of the problems that we've got here, and this was a problem with the original commit critic tool, was it wasn't completely obvious whether the suggestions it's making were really, really important or whether they were relatively trivial. So one of the things we can do is we can have a look at the original review material here. So this was the original review file, and here's a new version that I actually wrote about an hour or so ago. Wrong one again, sorry. Review new, there we go. It's a new version. You can see it's essentially the same thing, but there's a slight difference in the structure. And so we've given it, in the action block, we've given it some specific things we'd like it to do, which is to summarize how the software works and review the files. We've also given it some specific guidance about how we'd like it to rank certain things. So the previous one didn't give us any indication of how important a particular change was, but now we've added this extra line at the bottom that says, give us a ranking from 1 to 4 as to whether this is a critical issue, major issue, minor issue, or just some sort of observation about the software. So what we can do now is we can go back to our system shell, and I'll just make that window a little bit bigger. So we go back to our prompt, but this time I'm now going to run, instead of review, I'm now going to run review new, which is this new one that we've just done, and we will see what Claude comes back with this time. This time it's going to be very, very similar. You'll see the style's very similar, but you'll notice that the responses that we're streaming back are now showing an importance. So we can see what it thinks the change should be. It's also telling you why it thinks that particular change should be being made. In fact, this was true in the first version as well. So it would actually identify which guideline it was applying when it made its suggestions about changes that needed to be or could be made to improve the software. But now you can see that we have this importance. So it's saying we have a minor issue for various things. Sometimes we have observations. So these aren't very, very significant. We haven't actually got any critical or major issues here, which is good to see. But you can see how we've been able to refine that prompt and get that different response. Now, one of the other things that I mentioned, which is one of the reasons why we actually wanted to use Metaphor for doing these sorts of things, is we can also use a different AI model and see what that gives us. So just out of interest, we added support in for GPT 4.1 in this release. So we can ask GPT 4.1 instead of Claude Sonnet to do exactly the same thing. So this is now ChatGPT 4.1 doing the same review. And you can see it's a slightly different format. We get a slightly different output, but you get the same sorts of details now being reported back. So you can see the same elements coming, albeit in a slightly different style, but it's got that same characteristic of, if I just scroll back a little bit, you can see it's identifying observations, it's identifying minor issues. If there were more significant problems, it would be identifying those as well. But it shows the power of being able to use the same Metaphor prompt to be able to run with different AI models and see which one gives us the best results. Okay, well, thank you for watching. If you want to find out more, please check out the website at m6r.ai or subscribe to the YouTube channel.